It's time for The Verdict. The Verdict is a lively discussion of current events and legal issues pertinent to Oklahomans. The Verdict is hosted by Kent Myers and Mick Cornett. It's time for The Verdict.
Hello and welcome once again to The Verdict. Mick Cornett with Kent Myers. We're here every Wednesday night at 9:30 discussing topical issues and legal issues, and tonight we're going to pull the covers off one of those professions that a lot of people don't know a whole lot about.
They know that there are a lot of lobbyists at the state capitol and at the federal government level, but we're going to talk to two of the best here in the state to find out what they do and how they do it. Mark Green wrote a book a number of years ago called The Other Government. The theme of that book was that there's the state government, there's the federal government, and then there's another government that's made up of lobbyists because they have such an impact on what the laws are, what laws stay on the books, what laws go on the books. And the Capitol is filled up with lobbyists, and I think our viewers will enjoy hearing from two of the best and two of those with the greatest integrity, and find out what they do and how they do it.
I expect we'll learn a lot. That show is coming up next. You're watching The Verdict. And welcome back to The Verdict. Mick Cornett and Kent Myers, and Kent's going to introduce tonight's guests.
Tonight we are very pleased to have two guests join us, both well thought of, high integrity, good reputation lobbyists. There are some that have that kind of reputation, some that don't, just like there are lawyers and I suppose TV personalities and probably mayors fall in that same category. But we're pleased to have a table full of good people tonight. Across the table from me is Bobby Stem. Bobby is the senior partner in a firm called Capital Gains. He's an Oklahoma native. He has worked in the legislative arena since 1991. He is married to Kim, and Kim, by the way, is the assistant to the First Lady. Yes, sir. And we're going to have her on in a week or two.
Great.
On The Verdict. This is your first visit to The Verdict, but thank you, Bobby, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
On my left is Jami Longacre. Jami is a consultant with McSpaden and Associates and has been for 4 years. She grew up in a rural community, Kellyville, up in Creek County, still lives there today, graduated from OSU with a degree in agricultural economics, went to work after that or as a part of that in kind of legislative work and has remained in it to this very day. She's married to John, has one son, Turner, and Turner, it's time to go to bed. And this is her first visit to The Verdict, and I hope not her last. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Kent, for the invitation. And Turner better be in bed by this time.
I'm going to start with a short question, but I presume it may take a long answer, and that is, what does a lobbyist do? Be as thorough as you like.
Mayor, I think that there are two things that we do primarily, and that is educate and mediate. We have a member of the legislature, and we have an issue, and we've got to go in there. Depending on the access you have, you may have a long time to go in and educate on the issue or not so long. But you go in there, and I believe that you spend some time with that member of the legislature and you educate them on a particular bill, whether it's going to help or hurt. By the end of that time, he's formed an opinion or needs more education on the bill from the opposing side, whether they're trying to kill or stop the bill. And I think that's when it moves from educate to mediate. He's going to listen to both groups, and at that time you sit down most of the time with the other lobbyist, the member, and then you try to mediate a decision that the member can make that does good, takes a good step forward, but at the same time doesn't do anything negative to any other industry also. So educating, mediating.
Jami, what's your approach? Do you deal with it similar manner?
Very similar to what Bobby just mentioned, Mayor, and also Kent. But we also have the client side, that we work with those individuals that we have the opportunity to serve, and we take time to prepare them on issues prior to ever going to the Capitol and getting them ready as far as what their issues are and developing a strategy before we meet with members of the legislature. But that is definitely our role, is to carry a message for the individuals that we work with and we are an information resource to those members of the legislature, and we live and die by our reputations and by the credibility that we have out at that Capitol. So it's extremely important that you work concisely and thoroughly with the client, and then also you, as Bobby mentioned, provide that information to the members of the legislature, because there are so many issues at that state capitol that they seldom have time to really go through and read each bill in depth, and so it's our position to provide them with concise information and be very brief, and always be accurate, and let them know that we are a reliable resource for them on the various issues that we represent.
Folks, we know from our basic history courses that the Constitution gives every citizen the right to petition their government. It's a constitutionally protected right. But not everybody can go out and lobby at the legislature without doing something first, or getting registered, getting qualified, meeting some requirements. Jamie, let me direct the question first to you and then ask Bobby to comment. What does one have to do to become a lobbyist?
Well, as far as the systematic approach to entering the Capitol and representing clients, you have to go through a registration process and file with the Ethics Commission the list of clients that you'll be working with and the groups that you'll be working with for that legislative session. And that's done by the end of December. And a new law that was passed last year, there's now a reporting and registration fee of $100 that you file on behalf of those individuals that you'll be working with, members of the legislature, also with state employees and with members of state agencies, that you file for them in advance. But as far as what requires you to be a lobbyist and the background, that might be a debatable subject, but those are really the systematic approaches.
Well, neither one of you are prior elected officials in the state of Oklahoma. And yet you're effective lobbyists. So I think some people feel like to be a sportscaster, although Mick belied that as well, you have to be a former athlete. To be a lobbyist, you have to be a former legislator. I take it that's not correct.
That's not actually correct, because myself, I come from a background where I've worked with state government, worked for trade associations, but when I first realized, excuse me, that I wanted to be a lobbyist, I was an intern actually in '92 and got to lay out a semester from Oklahoma State, intern at the state capitol, and I was always intimidated by that process, as I'm sure many of your viewers may be as well. But I realized, working with various lobbyists and working with state leaders, that it's a very representative government, and you can make a difference in the opinions that you have, and you can actually affect public policy in that state, in our state. And when I saw that, I thought that's a wonderful career, that you could actually be out there and influence and make changes on behalf of citizens and on behalf of interests that you're representing.
Bobby, I would think it would help to know the legislators, because you might know which votes you've got, which votes you don't have, but it's which votes might you be able to help swing or educate, to use a term that might be more applicable. So you've got to know, from an individual issue standpoint, how legislators are likely to feel, don't you? Doesn't knowledge of the legislators have a key role in this process?
Mayor, that's right. And that's why, as a lobbyist, and I know Jamie does this too, during the election cycle, we'll actually track and try to learn as much as we can about everybody who's wanting to be elected. So that once November comes and they are elected, that allows us to know this person's in insurance, this person's in agriculture. We've got some new members that are very involved in agriculture, and they're going to be very helpful in Jamie and I's agriculture issues that her and I work on together. So it's really important to understand what their background is, and there's a lot of that goes on during the interim.
Let me jump in here and get us to a break. Jami Longacre, Bobby Stam are lobbyists, primarily at the state capitol, and we're learning more about their profession and how they view their role in the legislative process. Kent and I and the other two will be back right after this.
how you got my name, but thank
I'll
you.
tell you, there's a book that was put out, and I wanted to mail it. I wanted to do
The
Welcome back to the set of The Verdict. Mick Cornett, Kent Myers. We're here discussing lobbyists and their role in the legislative process.
I want to ask both, starting with Jamie, about reporting requirements that you may have if you, for instance, take a legislator to lunch or give them football tickets or whatever you might do, take them to a party. What kind of reporting requirements do you have to meet?
As a registered lobbyist in the state of Oklahoma, we have full disclosure with any type of gift that we purchase for a state legislator or their immediate family member or a state employee. And if that, in any 6-month period, if that amount exceeds $50, then we are required to report that we did X with whatever state official, and if that amount exceeds $50. So we do have full disclosure to the Ethics Commission for those types of gifts.
So the $49 box of candy
That's right.
doesn't get reported.
Doesn't get reported. Big ticket items will get attention. Billy Joel Elton John, Governor and First Lady, and my wife and I went to Billy Joel Elton John, $120 tickets, I think it was. It wasn't too long after that I got a call from the Daily Oklahoman saying pretty big gifts there, weren't they? So they're all within the law. We had a good time, but $50 now.
Let me follow up on that just a minute. Are those regs about right, or do they need to be tweaked? Do they need to be abolished? Do they need to be tightened up?
I don't have any problem with them. I think the more open the process is, then the better it is. I think when you start giving big limits or non-disclosure type of regulations, I think you lose some of the public's confidence. So I'm all for reporting whatever I do.
Jamie?
And I would agree with Bobby Kent. So many times historically, lobbyists have maybe there's been a negative connotation with us that we're buying all this power, buying all this influence, which it's not accurate. We want the public to realize that we have full disclosure, and I think the requirements are just right, because you can do a couple of dinners or something with a state official, and it doesn't take long to get to that $50 minimum.
Let me take you through a hypothetical situation. Let's say you've counted the votes, or somebody's done a head count and you may be 10 votes short. Take us through, what do you do? Develop a strategy on trying to educate legislators who might be swayed your way, or with proper education might see things differently? Take us through the process of developing that strategy.
I would look at those 10 members and look at their constituency. And let's say, for instance, that I'm talking about a credit union bill, so represent all the credit unions in the state. I'm going to look at their constituency and find out, I need to educate, but then at the same time, I'd like for their constituency to get involved and let them know that they have the support of their district to make such a decision. So I'm going to look at their geography and then try to get some additional people involved.
And how long does the process take? If someone calls and it's the night before a vote, is that too late?
It's not too late if you're organized, and a lot of times during the interim, that's what we'll set up as a process to say, within 12 hours, I need to be able to have 8 people in these key areas that can come to the Capitol and testify before a committee, or make telephone calls or quick faxes or emails to their member.
How do you do it?
Similar in the example that Bobby just gave there is called Grassroots Lobbying, and that's one of the things that we with our firm do during the interim, and as we're approaching this next legislative session, is we get the interests that we represent, and we've got a lot of trade associations that are made up of Oklahoma members, and we start working on phone banks and making those contacts with legislators early on. So when that legislator hears from their constituent, it's not when the house is on fire. They've already got that relationship developed, and we really work diligently throughout the interim and during the election cycle to make sure that our clients and those that we represent have those types of relationships as well, because we, as Bobby and I and our colleagues are at the Capitol working with legislators, we are seeing them on a daily basis. But when those members receive a call from their constituency, and hopefully your viewers will pick up the phone and make calls to their legislators this session on issues, those lawmakers respond. They do, and it doesn't take too many calls or too many letters to have a lawmaker respond on a particular issue.
Well, let me change the subject just a minute. Bobby has alluded to the fact that you need to know the lawmakers, and you've got a lot of new faces out there because of term limits and the replacement legislators that have now arrived. What kind of problems does that create for you?
I would certainly not say problems. Now,
Opportunities.
great opportunities, Kent. Great opportunities. While we were very sad to see some of the members leave the legislature due to term limits, we lost a lot of memory, a lot of institutional knowledge when they left this last year. But we've got 54 new members that are going to be working in the state legislature for the first time this year, 39 new House members, 15 new senators, and we're extremely excited about that opportunity as we've had the chance to get to know some of them through the election cycle. That's what we have been doing since November the 2nd, is just introducing ourselves, working with those that we represent to start conveying messages and start developing a relationship, because this is a business of relationships, and we pride ourselves in working on a daily basis to preserve those and to build those.
Bobby?
I think it's like if you've got an old computer that crashes and you have to go buy a new one. Your old computer had some great things on it. You worked very hard to establish files, documents, things that you can refer back to. But then you're excited about the opportunity to have this new computer. Bells, whistles, faster, and you've got some growth potential there. It is. You hate to lose some of the friends that we've had. But you have a bunch of new faces out there that you have a clean slate. And if you work hard enough to go out there and get their constituency involved, there's a lot of potential.
Yeah, I don't know that the American public is becoming more partisan, but the political parties seem to be becoming more partisan. How does that affect the way that you all do your job? Because I imagine there's a lot of group mentality in there. Oh, I've got to vote this way because that's the way the party is suggesting I vote. Don't you run into that on items? I would think from time to time.
You do, and I believe the only thing that causes, the more partisan it becomes, the only thing that causes me to have to look is maybe who my authors are. Because internally within the caucuses, you don't know what kind of politics is going on in there. It's a real confidential relationships within the caucuses. So you want to make sure you have the right authors. As far as clients go, I know that most of Jamie's clients, and mine too, they're not party clients. They're credit unions, or they're police officers, or they're hospices, and they don't care if it's Republican or Democrats. They just want to see something in their industry happen.
So your clients aren't partisan necessarily,
no.
But the legislators, to some degree, and different legislators have different degrees of partisanship.
That's right.
Are partisan. Is the partisanship, is that a troublesome opportunity for a lobbyist? Is it the fact that it's becoming more and more partisan?
Well, I think you can talk about partisanship, Republicans versus Democrats, but you also have other partisanship issues such as Tulsa versus Oklahoma City, rural versus urban. So there are a lot of different segments as we work on issues that we have to recognize that early on. And as Bobby mentioned, the clients that we work with now we will have rural versus urban issues with some of our groups, but you'll find that legislators, and especially this new group, it's so exciting to see how interested they're, just like information sponges, the new legislators that we have out there this session, but they are constantly looking back to their constituency, because they just came off of the campaign trail where they were knocking doors, listening to their constituency, talk to them on issues. And once they arrive at that Capitol, they realize healthcare is an important issue. Agriculture may be an important issue. Small business may be an important issue. And that's where they need to focus and hopefully not look towards the Democrat versus Republican partisanship that maybe some of the public perceive.
Mm-hmm. Bobby, when the legislature's not in session, I'll direct the same question in a minute to Jamie. I guess you just close up shop and go on vacation?
Absolutely not. I'll tell you, it's kind of wrong season, but same premise. It's spring training. The legislative process is 4 months, February, March, April, and May. Kind of like a 4-quarter football game. We've got to train the other 8 months out of the year. By training, we mean we got 52 new faces. Let's go meet them, get to their district, have some chicken fried steak in their small town, and listen to what's important to them. Also, you've got to get your clients ready, and it takes a couple of months to sit down and say, how did that law affect us that passed last year? What do we need to do to change it so that if it is affecting us negatively? So there's a lot of time that you spend with your client. during that fast-paced 4 months, you may not have time to thoroughly spend with your clients a lot of time. You may be hitting them with some quick emails, quick updates, quick voicemails, and then you need to spend the rest of the time really getting to know them and understanding their issues. And on the flip side, you've got to get out to those districts and meet as many legislators as you can, because they'll come back the next year and you want to have a stronger relationship than you did with them the prior year.
Just a few seconds left. You want to address that same issue? What do you do when you're not in session?
There used to be an interim, but there's no such thing as an interim anymore. Task forces, interim studies, and we do a lot of grassroots work with our clients, getting them up to speed on what has just happened and what we see that may happen in the next legislative session. So there is a lot of groundwork. Bobby's analogy of a 4-quarter football game and being in spring training is an excellent point.
Jami Longacre, Bobby Stem, lobbyists at the state capitol. We appreciate both of you coming on the show.
Thank you very much.
Kent and I'll have a final word when we return. Back to the verdict, wrapping up the show. You give some website information for our guest. Bobby Stem works for Capital Gains. Their website is at cgok.com. Jami Longacre can be reached on the web at lobbyok.com. What about next week?
Representing the unpopular client. Should be interesting.
We'll see you then.